Yesterday I requested some topics to make videos out of, or should I say begged, depending on how desperate I looked in last night's video, and some of you kindly got in touch, including Joshua. Now if you do have some topics, please keep them coming, because you know, West Ham news is pretty thin on the ground right now, and when that happens, myself and Gonzo are less fussy about the topics. We'll take anything, so get your suggestions in. But Joshua said, why don't you react to Football Daily's video? Now they did a video why you are wrong about David Moyes and West Ham. Not you personally, not us either, not why Hammers Chat are wrong about David Moyes and West Ham, just why you in general are perhaps wrong about Moyes and West Ham. So if you think West Ham are struggling, that David Moyes is doing a really bad job, this is why you are wrong. So that's what Joshua suggested. You all know who Football Daily is, I assume. Really big football channel, jealous, that produces really good content. Also jealous, I bet they don't ask their subscribers for topics, let's put it that way. But anyway, I've gone and watched it, so thank you very much Joshua, and this is my reaction to that video. Go watch it first, by the way, because there's just spoilers from here on in, starting right now, because that video is far too stats based. It's purely statistical. It's just stat. There is no opinion whatsoever, and I get it, by the way. I do get the concept. Before someone comes back and says that's the point of the video, it's a stats based video, it's evidence as to why Moyes is doing okay and West Ham are underperforming, but that's not David Moyes' fault. I get the concept of it, by the way. I really do, but it's just too stats based for me. Now I like statistics in football. Those that have been subscribed to the channel for a while know that. I think they're important. I think data is important, and I think those clubs that read data correctly and better benefit a lot from it. Take Brighton, take Brentford, two prime examples of clubs that know how to use data in football. And my rule of thumb is statistics are indicators. That's all they are. They highlight an area to you, or they highlight a player to you, but then you need to go and do the eye test. You need to go and have a look for yourself and work other things out. Like I said, when we put up the player ratings on Monday regarding Declan Rice, I thought he was fantastic at St James's Park, and I said that the statistics will show you this, that and the other. We can see how many tackles Rice have done, how many interceptions Declan Rice has done, his pass completion, all that is there in numerical form presented to you. But show me a statistic that shows how good Declan Rice was at reading the game, how good his positioning was, how many times did he slow down Newcastle's attack. Not did he intercept the ball, did he make a tackle, he was just in the right position at the right time that had to slow down that Newcastle attack and they had to pass it. There is no data to show that. You need the eye test. Now this video is purely stats in facts, and I would even dispute the facts to some extent here, but that's just because I've got a personal issue with the expected assists statistic, for example, because that is measured, it's the value of a chance created, but that is only measured when there's a shot at the end of it. So for example, if Aaron Cresswell was to whip in this wonderful cross but Michail Antonio didn't get his head on it, his XG is expected assist, it doesn't count. That cross does not count. It could be the best cross of the weekend, but the striker makes an error and doesn't make a connection with it, it doesn't count. Yeah, if he puts in the exact same cross and the striker gets his head on it, then it counts. And I've just got a bit of an issue with that, because expected assists should be just that. Well, how much assist is expected from the creativity from that player? But it's not measured unless a shot is taken off the back of it. But anyway, that's a completely separate thing altogether. Now, some of the stuff he came up with is important, it is true, it is relevant here, like the defensive performance of West Ham United. We know it's good, and had he thrown in some opinions, it could have made a really better case. I think I could have made a better case than he did by using opinions. For example, Neil Figueroa, West Ham in the first half of the season haven't had Neil Figueroa. Had they had Neil Figueroa, they would have been performing better. I'm now going to present the evidence comparing West Ham's defence pre-Neil Figueroa and with Neil Figueroa in the team. It's improved a lot, and this is why West Ham will perform better. And I think with opinions merged with stats, you could probably make a really good case for that video. Now, I'm going to be a little bit hypocritical here. We're doing our own version of that next week anyway, and it's more stats based and opinion based, because Jack does Hammerlytics over on our Patreon every single week. Me and Gonzo are the emotional fans, if you like, and it's a bit harsh to call Jack emotionless, but he takes a look at the latest game from an analysis point of view, and he provides that over on Patreon. So he's going to be taking an analysis outlook at West Ham's season so far, and basically suggesting why West Ham won't get relegated, why they'll be fine. It's not too dissimilar to what the Football Daily have just provided, but it's so stats based. But I just think it's quite contradictory at times. I don't think it's really fair on the opinion of the West Ham fan. Now, maybe because it's a different opinion to mine, I'm looking at it incorrectly here. But this is my opinion off the back of that video. I made some bullet points, alright? I've come prepared for this one. So, he kept comparing to last season as a whole. At one point, he was comparing our first 20 games this season to our first 20 games last season. I think that's slightly unfair. And it's not necessarily because of this season, actually because the last campaign we were overperforming for the first half of the season. I think all West Ham fans would agree with that. There's probably some that will disagree, but I think most would agree that when we were sitting fourth in December, we were overperforming. We weren't expecting to be up there at that point of the season. So when he's comparing this part of the campaign to the equivalent last season, it's a bit harsh because you're actually comparing an underperforming West Ham to an overperforming West Ham. But the point was, well, look how much West Ham have dropped off, which is correct. But last season, those same statistics were higher than they possibly should have been based on the talent within the squad because we were just doing really, really well. But then a lot of the statistics for this season were getting compared to last season as a whole. Now, a lot of West Ham fans' grievances isn't about just this season. And it wasn't about last season as a whole. It was the second half of last season. You know this. It's about the calendar year 2022. So when you're comparing it to last season, it's got the overperforming half and the underperforming half merged together. So the statistics look okay as a whole, as a mean over the entire season. They look okay because the poor performing area has been balanced out by how good we were pre-Christmas in the Premier League last season. But what he could have done, and perhaps what he should have done, is take a look at West Ham's second half, Christmas onwards, look at those statistics and compare them to the season averages, if you like, and you would see how much West Ham were underperforming in the second half of that season. Then compare that second half to this season, and I'd imagine the statistics are quite similar in that regards. And I just found it a little bit unfair. I think unfair is the phrase I would use. Now, it is difficult for a football neutral channel to go and do this. They're looking at it and they're trying to be balanced. That's what they're trying to be. Like I said, I get the concept of the video, but I just don't think it added up. And there was one contradiction, if you like, in my opinion, which was basically saying, look how much shots West Ham are having. So that would suggest that in the attacking third, we're creating the opportunities, we're just not converting them. Now, that's correct. Now, I've actually got a couple of my own statistics to back up that point further. Take what the Football Daily have said and go one step further with it to back it up. And it almost defends David Moyes, in my opinion. I think this defends David Moyes. They're actually second bottom in the Premier League for our conversion rate, and we're bottom for shot accuracy. So when we're shooting, we are the 20th team in the Premier League. We're bottom for getting those shots on target. So our shooting accuracy is the worst in the league. In terms of conversion rate, so we're not getting that many on target, but those that we are getting on target, our conversion rate is the second poorest in the league. Only Wolves have got a worse off conversion rate than West Ham in the Premier League this season. So that would back up that offensively we are underperforming individually. Jared Bowen, Saïd Benrahma, Mikel Antonio, Gianluca Scamacca, Pablo Fornals, those players aren't doing well enough in the final third. The statistics suggest that, and this is where I think stats can be important, and stats can be, in my opinion, indicators. Those statistics I've just pulled out would indicate the finishing is poor. We've tried to rectify that in January. We've brought in Danny Ings. That is why we brought in Danny Ings. Because Danny Ings, when he arrived at West Ham, was the sixth best finisher in the Premier League statistically in terms of his conversion rate. We've looked at it, thought we're creating some chances, we're getting shots away, but they're not hitting the target and they're not going into the back of the net. So what we're going to do about it, we're going to go buy someone that's clinical, somebody that's scored goals in the Premier League season after season, somebody that doesn't always need chances, someone that can take an average ball and turn it into a good one by putting it in the back of the net. And that's why we've gone and signed Danny Ings, in my opinion, because we've noticed that our attacking outlets are just not up to it this season. They're not performing very well. In comes Danny Ings. But off the back of that, he said, and I didn't know this, so I was quite, like I said, it's not a bad video. I realise I'm going in two-footed on it. I just think it's too stats-based, and I think you always need eye test. Eye test is the most important thing in football, in my opinion. Stats can only go so far, and then you need to then go watch for yourself and make judgments off the back of that. But this is a stat I did not know, and this is before the weekend. This was after the Everton game, before the Newcastle game. West Ham were behind for 37% of our games, which is the second highest in the Premier League. Only Southampton were worse than us. Now, I didn't realise that, but there has to be a correlation between the number of shots and the fact that we're trailing in games the most behind Southampton, because this comes down to a tactical issue. And the fact that we're behind 37%, the fact that we're trailing for the second most in the Premier League, that has to be a tactical thing, and we know it's a tactical thing. And you don't have to take my word for it. Don't take mine. Take Michail Antonio's last season when he was on his podcast discussing what we do. Well, I think it was at the start of this season actually, when he was telling Callum Wilson the plan is to sit back, soak it up, and then go try and nick it. That is tactical. Hear it from Michail Antonio. Vladimir Soufal, after the Newcastle game on Saturday, he said it perhaps wasn't a bad thing that we went behind so early because we play better when we've conceded. That is a tactical decision, to sit back, soak it up, keep it tight, and then try and get a goal. Those are tactics. So this has a correlation. All this has a correlation. Like I said, if we're going to go behind early, we're going to go behind the most. Naturally, your shots, in terms of quantity, are going to increase because you're chasing the game. And this is something that's probably different to last season. If you were to go look at the amount of times West Ham were behind last season compared to last season, I'd imagine there's a big difference. That's possibly why our shots per game on average probably increased this season compared to last, because we're behind more often. If our tactics were to score early and sit back, our shots would come right down, but our points would go up because we're not attacking as much. We're sitting on a lead rather than chasing a deficit. And I just think there's a correlation there between the amount of shots when we're conceding so often in the game, and that is a tactical thing. Anyway, shall we continue? I just wrote down poor attack, which is why the tactics have struggled. Now, that is what I will say. I think David Moyes' default game plan, which is keep it tight and try and get something on the counter-attack, try and get something later on in the game and get the 3 points, will sometimes work. It will sometimes work. But what you're doing is you're relying on two things. You're relying on a good defence. We've got that. It's in the video. Statistically, we're really good defensively. Factually, in terms of goals conceded in the Premier League, I think we've got the 5th best record. We are really good defensively. We are. 100% we are. But if we're going to play counter-attacking football, you need your defence to be good. That's fine. But you also need to be clinical. That's what we are not. And this is where perhaps David Moyes has been a little bit unlucky. For his tactics to work, he needs that front three to score goals and create goals with lesser opportunities than other teams. We have not done that this season. Last season in the first half, we did. When we finished 6th, we did. We were a fantastic counter-attacking team that year. Bowen, Fornals, Antonio, we were brilliant. Jesse Lingard when he was here. But again, you look at Jesse Lingard's output. 9 goals in 16 games. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. You were never going to be able to replace that. You were never going to be able to go buy a player that's going to play 32 games and score 18 goals playing attacking midfield for West Ham. It was impossible. But that was sort of short-term success, if you like. Those statistics were there, and we were never going to be able to replicate that, but it had a huge impact on the way that we played and why we overperformed when we finished 6th in the Premier League. Last season, like I said, we didn't have Jesse Lingard. We noticed it at times, but it worked. David Moyes' tactics were working in the first half of the season. Second half, it hasn't worked. This season, it hasn't worked. What's the reasons for that? Well, there's plenty of them. A lot of them are given in Football Daily. But like I said, the attack at the minute is not clinical. We're not scoring goals. We are underperforming. And that's that. The one thing that I think was a little bit frustrating was when he spoke about Paqueta, and he basically suggested that Paqueta was brought in to add that attacking output, but he's not been able to because he's playing deeper in midfield. And this is where stats are a little bit frustrating, because if you watched him, you would know his better performances, I think, is the general consensus anyway, reading the comments and the videos after the Newcastle game, after the Everton game, where Paqueta is played a bit deeper. The Brentford League game at home, he played deeper next to Declan Rice. I thought he had a good game then. We didn't win, but I thought Paqueta improved. Paqueta's performances have definitely improved playing deeper in midfield next to Declan Rice. I think that's a general consensus of West Ham fans, certainly our subscribers are anyway. In my opinion as well, I agree with that. I think that's true. But this is where, if you don't have any emotion, if you're not watching the game, you think, well, West Ham are struggling because Paqueta's played deeper in midfield rather than in the number 10 role. Now, statistically, the only game he's been more creative in playing in the number 10 role than the sort of centre midfield role was at home to Fulham. I had a little look at that one, and he was better at home to Fulham in terms of creative output than he has been in any other game this season, where he did play in the number 10 position. But I don't think, it's sort of hinted maybe that Paqueta's maybe been shackled a little bit by the tactics of David Moyes, funnily enough, which is what they were defending. But I don't think that's the case, as we know as West Ham fans. But anyway, that's my opinion about it. I thought, do you know something? I know I've been going in two-footed, and I don't mean to, because it is a good video. It's a well-made video. He's got a bloody nice voice, I'll tell you that. Do you know this ASMR stuff? I tried it ages ago. I gave about 3 minutes. ASMR stuff, it's meant to relax you, chill you out. It just made me more frustrated. I got more tense listening to it. I think it's because I was bored. I was getting frustrated that I wasn't relaxed. It made me less relaxed. Anyway, his voice, really nice voice, well put together video. It's a really good channel. I'm aware of who the Football Daily are. I don't watch all the videos. I tune into Football Daily on occasions anyway. But with this one, I just think it's so stats based. It's so heavy about numbers, and I think it just removes far too much about football. Even speaks about it in terms of West Ham conceding goals. He says football has randomness to it. There is elements of luck. Whereas somebody scores an incredible goal against you, you concede a dodgy penalty. Those things are true. And I agree that there is a lot of randomness in football. There's a lot of things that you cannot measure statistically. But you can't use that as a reason why West Ham defensively might be conceding goals, but then not apply it elsewhere in the video. So just a bit too stats heavy. Now, like I said, we do our own version of it over on Patreon every single week with Jack, with the Hammerlytics show, where I always say me and Gonzo are the emotional ones. He's the emotionless one. And he looks at our recent games through analysis. And a lot of patrons like it. We'll be doing a video next week on the channel from that perspective, and it is about why West Ham will stay in the Premier League. I think it's about that. It's Jack's show, he's in control of it, but Jack certainly suggests himself that if you look at the data, West Ham can get closer to the average. That will increase us. If other teams get closer to their averages, which is performing less, then we'll be more than fine. So we're going to do our own version of it. So it's not that I dislike this type of video completely. You know, Tifo Football was one of the first YouTube channels I thoroughly enjoyed watching on a regular basis. I wasn't that into YouTube, believe it or not, a few years ago. I discovered Tifo Football and absolutely loved it. They're very stats heavy, but I just think sometimes it goes a bit too far, and I think it removes a lot of it. And like I said, I think I could have made a case why I could make a case as to why I'm overreacting about David Moyes myself, with opinions. And like I said, the main one isn't in that video because it can't be measured by statistics. That is the return of Nevegaard and the fact that David Moyes hasn't had Nevegaard all season. Because if he had, I think we'd have more points on the board. I think we'd be sitting in mid-table at the minute. But that's just an opinion. And I guess the problem is I can't prove that through stats. But they, through using stats, have been able to suggest that actually West Ham aren't doing too bad this season and they'll be okay. And that's why you are wrong about David Moyes and West Ham.